Earlier this week, we did review with StatEdit StatCalc, only working with linear equations. Today, we are going to do a review with StatEdit StatCalc, but we're going to be looking at linear, quadratic, or exponential functions. So, your first paper should look like this. Exact same steps. Your calculator skills are there on the paper for you. Step number 4 tells you to determine if you need to use linear, quadratic, or exponential. So before you know what to use in your calculator, you need to examine the tables themselves. Directions say, determine if the following tables are linear, quadratic, or exponential, and then use StatEdit StatCalc to write the equation that best represents the function. So some things that you have to know, some definitions or some vocabulary, is first difference, second difference, and common ratio. So anytime you're examining and looking at tables of values to determine if they're linear, quadratic, or exponential and be comparative with them, you have to first make sure that your x values are either consecutive or that they are evenly spaced. So it doesn't matter if they count by ones, they can count by twos and skip count by threes, but as long as those x values are evenly spaced, these next steps can be used. When you're dealing with linear, the first thing you want, the thing you're looking for is a first difference to be common. So the first part is, like I said, make sure your x's are evenly spaced. And as we see here, they're all counting by ones. So they obviously are evenly spaced. Then you're looking at your y values. What is the difference between -4 and -3? Well, this increases by 3. -1 to 2 increases by 3. 2 to 5 increases by 3. And 5 to 8 increases by 3. The common difference is increasing 3 every time. So we know that that one is linear. So for this, when we do StatEdit StatCalc, we're going to go ahead and use 4 for linear to determine the equation. Number 2 is going to be quadratic. And we determine that because we're looking for a common second difference. So once again, I'm not going to write it, but we see that our y values are our x values are consecutive. They're increasing by 1 every time. And I'll kind of just get it started so we can see it. Increasing by 1, increasing by 1. So now I can look to see if the first difference and second difference is common. First difference, 1 to 0. Decreases by 1. 0 to 3 increases by 3. So we can see right off the bat, this is not going to give me a common first difference. It's not increasing by the same amount, but we need to still keep going. 3 to 10 is 7. 10 to 21 is 11. 21 to 36 is 15. And 36 to 55 is 19. Like I said, obviously the first difference is not common, but look what happens here when I compare the differences now. From -1 to 3 increases by 4. 3 to 7 increases by 4. 7 to 11, increase of 4. 11 to 15. And 15 to 19 both increase by 4. First difference was not the same, but the second difference was. So because the second difference is common, we are working with quadratic. Table number 3 is exponential, not just because I say it is, but I'm going to show you why. Just going through, you could quickly go through and check first difference, second difference, but you're going to see you're not going to have anything common with those. Checking your x values first. They're consecutive x values, so that's good. We know we can compare the y values then. in exponential functions, the differences or the y values aren't a difference, they're a ratio. It's a common ratio. What do I do to 4 to get to 12? And if you don't know, you can take 12 and divide by 4, and you'll see it, you get 3. So if I take 4 and multiply by 3, I get 12. What do I get to go from 12 to 36? Multiply by 3. 36 to 108. If you don't know, 108 divided by 36 is 3. So multiply 36 by 3 and you get 108. 108 times 3 is 324. We have a common ratio here, or a multiple to get to the next one. So we are dealing with exponential. So now we're going to go ahead and go up and look at our equations again and use our calculator skills for those. Anytime you start putting a table of values into your calculator and edit stat calc, I encourage you to clear it. Clear out your calculator to start. Stat. Edit is where we put our information in. Put our x values into L1. Whoops, I made a common error already. X values go into L1, Y values go into L2. Stat, calc. If you push 4, you can just have to hit enter one time. Stat calc 4, enter, gives me the equation y equals 3x plus 2. I want to share some things that students often make common mistakes with in the calculator real quick before I go any farther on these. Some things that happen quite often. Let's go back to our stat. Just watch for a minute on the screen and I'll show you. Sometimes they go in here and they're putting data in, and let's say they got to the bottom and they got sidetracked or just forgot to put in any piece of data. And notice now I have more X's than I do Y's, but you don't usually notice that right away. But if I put stat over to calc and 4, enter, it's going to tell me I have an error. And that error is a dimensional mismatch error. That's just telling you your X's and Y's, there's not enough of one or the other. It could be too many X's, it could be too many Y's. Sometimes they'll even give you a table of values that is incomplete during a test. If they don't give you a complete point, a complete ordered pair, don't put that data in your calculator. Leave that one out and use the others around it in order to find it. You can't have more of one value than you do another. You have to have equal values of both. So there's one error that common happens. Let's go ahead and clear this. Go back in and put that piece of data in. It was an 8. Enter. Sometimes another thing that happens, let's say you go to stat over to calc and you push 5 by accident. You go, oh, no, I didn't want quadratic. I want linear. So then you go back to stat again and over to calc and you push 4. Notice I have a quad and a linear, or sometimes people even have linear. I have too much information on that line. I'm telling my calculator too many things, and now there's an error. It's a syntax error. So if I just tell it to go to the error, it shows me where that's at. If I just clear out that home screen and start over, I'm good. And I just can't have more than one command sitting on the home screen waiting to tell my calculator to do something for it to work. So those are 2 common errors that I see when I'm walking around classrooms helping students with stat calc. And those are just real simple fixes that you can go in and clear out your calculator, or even start over if you need to, or go back and check your data and just enter one point if you need to. Question number 2, let's go ahead and clear our calculator and put this data in. Stat, edit, nope, stat first. Stat, edit, enter our data. We have our data into L1 and L2. Stat, calc, quadratic is 5, and enter. 2x squared plus a negative 3. So instead of putting plus negative 3x, we could put just minus 3x plus 1. Y equals 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. Last one, exponential. Clear your calculator. Stat, edit. Make sure my data points are correct. Stat, calc. Notice you don't see a 0 here, but if you scroll up or scroll down, you'll see that 0. If you push enter scrolling, you'll have to push enter a second time. If you just push 0, you only have to hit enter one time. This makes this exponential. What makes a function exponential is that the exponent is a variable. This says y equals 4 times 3 raised to the x power. This x up here as an exponent is what makes this function exponential. So you now have 3 problems to look at yourself. I want you to determine if they have a common first difference. If so, it's linear. If they have a common second difference, then it's quadratic. Or if there's a common ratio, that makes it exponential. So go ahead and do 4, 5, and 6. Your classroom teacher will give you about 7 or 8 minutes to finish those up, and then they will reveal the answers to you. Try them on your own first.